with the audience towards the end of each session. And if you have a question, you can either type it into the chat box or use the raise your hand button, in which case we will unmute you and hear your question. So without further ado, may I first invite Professor Gina Marchetti, Chairperson of CGED, to say a few words. Professor Marchetti, please.
Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled to be able to be here to help host this wonderful exhibition with the Equal Opportunities Commission. It's a very moving exhibition of photography, and we've got two brilliant panels of artists and NGO representatives and scholars to discuss them with you. I wanted to just I want to thank all the panelists, and I want to thank everyone at EO, of course, for doing this, but I wanted to particularly thank two of my colleagues at Hong Kong U, Georgina Challen and Leeh Chong, for really being the driving force, at least on our end, for this wonderful event and for making sure that this exhibition can be seen by so many people at the Hong Kong U campus. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Marchetti. Next, we'd like to invite Mr. Ricky Chu, Chairperson of the EOC, to give opening remarks. Mr. Chu, please.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Marchetti, Dr. Leeh Chong, distinguished guests and friends, good afternoon. It's really my pleasure to welcome you all to this seminar, and an honor for the EOC to be partnering with Hong Kong U on this event. In times of unease and uncertainty, such as the present, ideals like diversity and inclusion are particularly susceptible to backlash, and we need opportunities like this to keep the spirit of collaboration and dialogue alive. This seminar is part of a larger campaign the EOC wrote out last December, a visual storytelling project called The Way We Are, where we invited marginalized communities to contribute original photos capturing everyday life as they live it, the good, the bad, the joys, and the frustrations. The underlying idea is to provide a platform of self-representation for these communities, whose first-person narratives would help the society rethink some of the stereotypes and prejudice that remain rampant today. The campaign eventually gave birth to a collection of 130 photos from underrepresented women in Hong Kong, including carers, migrant workers, non-Chinese youth, new arrivals from mainland China, as well as people facing physical or mental health challenges, as well as members of the LGBT communities. A selection of these works is now being exhibited at Run Run Shaw Tower in the Hong Kong U, whilst the entire collection is uploaded on the EOC website as well. I encourage you to check them out. In fact, two of our contributing photographers today, Leeh Ann and Kawaljot, will be speaking. Coming back to this seminar, we chose the theme, Voices of Hong Kong Women, not only to celebrate International Women's Day, but also to highlight the plurality of women's experience. There can be a material difference, for instance, between the challenges female domestic workers may encounter and those facing women executives who are trying to break the glass ceiling. From gender and sexuality to race and socioeconomic status, identities often intersect with one another in shaping our life experiences. In other words, we cannot adequately address gender inequality without considering the interplay with other forms of inequalities. As a statutory body, the EOC's primary task is to handle complaints falling within the ambit of the anti-discrimination ordinances in Hong Kong. These laws are based on the notion of protected characteristics, including sex, marital status, pregnancy, breastfeeding, disability, race, and family status. From the perspective of law enforcement, the idea of protected characteristics is a crucial one. We have the statutory power to commence an investigation as long as an aggrieved person files a complaint alleging an unlawful act based on any of these characteristics. However, the challenges women face in reality can be more complex than what the single identity or characteristic can account for. This is why the EOC actively conducts research and advocates policy change besides enforcing the law. Now, let me quote two examples. Firstly, last September, we made a submission to the Legislative Council Panel on Welfare Service regarding support measures for carers. While the government is offering allowances for low-income carers looking after old adults or people with disabilities, recipients of the disability allowance are not eligible to apply because they are not considered to be fit and capable carers. Well, but obviously, having a disability does not necessarily mean that one cannot perform caring roles and functions. Indeed, cases of people with disabilities taking up the role of carer are not uncommon. And because women today continue to disproportionately bear family caring responsibilities, this rigid rule puts female caregivers who have disabilities themselves at an even greater disadvantages. The EOC, therefore, recommend a review of the restriction, stressing that due regard should be given to the individual capacity and circumstances of applicants. Secondly, in 2019, we released a study report having surveyed over 14,000 undergrad and postgrad students in 9 universities in Hong Kong about their experience of sexual students higher chance of experiencing sexual harassment on campus than male students by 4.5 percentage points. And LGBT students were 1.7 times more likely to be sexually harassed than their heterosexual and cisgender counterparts. And students with disabilities, twice more likely than with those without. This is a clear example of a problem that is often framed as a purely gender-based issue, when in fact, it involves other factors that had taken root way before those students entered university. That is why, as part of our follow-up action roundtable, reviewing the current status of sex education in primary and secondary schools, and relay feedback from frontline practitioners, including teachers, principals, and social workers, to the Education Bureau. A key recommendation is to set up a dedicated curriculum or guideline with a stronger focus on values such as diversity and inclusion. The above are just a glimpse of the work the EOC has been doing to address intersectional inequality, a theme that we'll run through this seminar this afternoon, where you will be hearing from women of diversified backgrounds, women who work hard to amplify marginalized voices through art, policy advocacy, community service, and other means. On behalf of the EOC, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our speakers and moderators today, and also thank you all for supporting this event. I look forward to the discussions and wish you all enjoy them too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chu. We're now coming to the first panel for today with the theme Class, Race and Gender, Intersectionality and Women in Hong Kong. We are very happy to have Dr. Alvin Wong to serve as our moderator. Dr. Wong is Assistant Professor in the Department of Comparative Literature at HKU. May I invite Dr. Wong to introduce our panelists, please? Over to you, Dr. Wong.
Thank you. And let me say that I'm so grateful to the collaboration between EOC and also the introduction given by Ricky. I think this is such a wonderful occasion. And also in preparing to moderate this panel, I revisited so many important scholarship on intersectionality, such as those offered by Kimberly Crenshaw on the violence and subordination and opportunity confronted and encountered by women of color in the US, and then subsequent work by Patricia Hill Collins on intersectionality, not only as a buzzword in academia, but actually as a model for social change and social praxis. And it's wonderful to talk about these things in the academic context, but I think it's even more inspirational and important that we have this platform today to engage with these dialogues with my wonderful panelists. So what I will do is I'll introduce each panelist before their 5 minutes. So I'll try to keep time to the 5 minutes, their own 5 minutes talk. And then I'll introduce the next panelist again. So our first speaker is Dr. Brenda Rodriguez-Aldred. She was born in the Philippines and she is a registered psychologist. She graduated with magna cum laude honors in her PhD in clinical psychology. Her MA thesis and PhD in clinical psychology dissertation were about transgender women. She's among the board of director of STRAPT, the Society of Transgender Women Advocates of the Philippines, which is the first and longest existing supports and advocacy group for and of transgender women. She's also one of the trans secretariats of ILGA, the International LGBT Association. She leads the English-speaking members of TGR, Transgender Resource Center in Hong Kong, and member of Association of World Citizens Hong Kong. So she definitely wears many hats here. And she's also my wonderful colleague and a lecturer at HKU, where she teaches sexuality and gender related courses in both the Common Core and also the gender study program. And she's perhaps one of the few, if not the only, trans academics in Hong Kong. She has upcoming publications on transgender people's experience, and she has been active in activism and rights advocacy for LGBTQ and women in both the Philippines and Hong Kong. Brenda is also a choir soprano in Harmonics, the first LGBTQA choir in Hong Kong. So without further ado, I'll turn the floor to Brenda.
Hi. Oh, hi. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having us here. And it's the International Day of Awareness on women's issues. So I would like to also acknowledge all the other women in this panel today. So thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry because I think the internet connection can be a bit slow. Yeah. So for my very brief presentation, I would just like to share some of the work that we have been doing for the past couple of years as a member of the Society of Transsexual Women of the Philippines, which is the one of the first trans organization in the actually it is in the Philippines and perhaps even in Southeast Asia. We're able to actually educate the Filipinos on the situations and the issues faced by transgender people, particularly transgender women. In fact, we're also able to introduce a term that we can actually use in the Philippines other than calling ourselves as transgender women. We're able to introduce the word trans Pinays, and then a few years after that, we're able to introduce the word trans Pinoys also to refer to the experiences of transgender Filipino men. And we're also able to work with other trans organizations and LGBTQ organizations outside of the Philippines. We were able to present in different regional and international conferences issues faced by trans Filipinos. And also we were able to work with the local legislators in the Philippines in citing situations of faced by trans people in terms of discrimination, prejudice, transphobia in the workplace and beyond the workplace. I think since then, a lot of Filipinos now are able to recognize that there are trans people because before this, we have this term called bakla, and it's like an umbrella term, and it encompasses everyone who was assigned male at birth. It would have been okay, it's a cultural identity at the same time, but then it has become problematic because trans women eventually experienced greater marginalization and oppression because of being invisible within the bakla spectrum of identity. So I think the work that we have done has helped provide greater visibility for trans people. And over the past year, because of the COVID-19, it is unfortunate for us to discover that a lot of trans people, specifically trans women, have experienced displacement, so unemployment, and part of this displacement is the experience of doing sex work. So to be very open about it, a lot of trans women are forced to do sex work, not just in the Philippines, but even in other parts of Asia. It's also problematic to talk about it here in the context of Hong Kong because apart from the laws on sex work, there's also no gender recognition law in Hong Kong, and there is no gender recognition law in the Philippines. So because of that, unless we're able to change our gender markers and names in another country, if we have assumed different residency or different citizenship, we can potentially experience different layers of discrimination already just by presenting our identification. So over the past year, the displacement experienced by trans women has led us to actually do some fundraising and awareness campaigns so we can at least provide some amount of help to some of these displaced women. We don't only just focus on the issues of trans women, but we also insert ourselves in the greater women's movement. So the women's movement in the Philippines has been quite organized for a couple of decades, but admittedly, the first few decades has not been very easy because of the exclusion that we experienced. I think not just in the Philippines, but even in the greater global women's movement, it's been a journey for trans women to be given a voice and to be recognized as women. And so today, it feels more meaningful to be part of this event because I feel that there is now officially, well, not officially, but now I feel welcome to be part of the greater women's movement. And as an academic, as a trans academic, it feels even more authentic to be part of a safe space where I can teach and talk about situations faced by LGBT people in general from a more authentic point of view. So that's it for me. And I'll just wait for Albie to throw me some questions.
Hi, Brenda. So I think what we might do is let's have the, thank you so much for your 5 minutes talk. Let's have the 5 minutes talk by each panelist, and then the next 15 minutes we'll do Q&A. With me and the panelists, and then we'll open up for 15 minutes more for Q&A with the audience. Yeah, great. Okay. Thank you so much for this inspiration talk, very inspirational talk. So let's move to our next, second speaker, which is Leeh Ann. Leeh Ann is an award-winning photographer from Pangasinan, the Philippines, and she holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology, has worked as a high school teacher and a private tutor before migrating to Hong Kong in 2013, where she has since worked as a domestic worker. A self-taught photographer originally learning from YouTube videos and online articles, Leeh Ann is now a familiar face in the city's photography community. She has described the arts form as both a way to ward off feelings of homesickness and isolation, and also to build connections with the people of Hong Kong and others who share her same passion. She spends her weekend taking snapshots around the city, doing volunteer work with NGOs to raise awareness among fellow migrants about their legal rights and sexual health, and among other issues. So let's turn the floor to Leeh Ann.
Hi, is it clear? Can you hear me? Yes, so thank you so much for this opportunity and to be invited as one of the panelists. So, yeah, I am Leeh Ann, a Filipina, former teacher, photographer, and migrant domestic worker. So 8 years ago, I left my job as a secondary teacher, my family, and my home country to work for a family based here in the city. Personal circumstances led me to move here, and during that time, it felt my world turned 180 degrees in just a snap. I mean, imagine from being a professional to being a household helper. Of course, I knew that life wasn't going to be the same here in Hong Kong, but I don't think it's gonna be really hard. I mean, I was thinking that when my first thought when it's gonna be easy, like the job that I will be doing are the things that I'm doing in our house, but I realized it's not that. I didn't think that anything could have really prepared me for the emotions and scenarios I experienced in my first month. The hardest part was not the job itself. It was the stigma associated with being a migrant worker, specifically if you're a domestic worker. Being the lowest paid worker, so somehow we are in the lowest bracket in the society, and also the open secret abuses which are happening. Not only did I look different and speak a different language, but my status seemed to precede me. It was that feeling of being some sort of second-class tier citizen in the eyes of the others, which was the hardest and most painful to overcome. Part of our life as a domestic helper that we continue to overcome in our daily lives. Take another stigma that is being associated to our job is our gender. Like we are clear, yeah, being a domestic worker and being a woman, many things that we are submissive, that we just keep on saying yes, and we cannot go against the rules. So thus being a helper is a good job for us. With these stigmas being associated with our job and gender, we are clearly at the bottom, struggling yet surviving to fight for our rights and have our voices to be heard. Working hard to show everyone that we are not defined by our job, that we are more than just a maid. And 6 years ago, like with just 10 hours off on Sundays and a curfew, I was still lucky to meet people who gave me free photography lessons, free camera, and I also spent hours watching videos on YouTube on photography. And yeah, 6 years ago, I decided to go back to photography, which is not which is not only a hobby for me. Now I consider it as my personal therapy. I use it to cope up with the difficulties I have to face as a migrant worker. I use it to express my thoughts, use it as an outlet to express what I see and how I feel. I also use it as a tool to make me feel at home and adapt here in Hong Kong. And I can say now that since I started going out and taking photos, slowly I found my connection to the city. I found my place. So somehow I feel that I'm not only a migrant. I can say now that I'm part of Hong Kong in some ways. Then I also started being involved with Sensational. So it's a group here in Hong Kong that aims to empower women through photography. When I started with them, I'm just a mere student, but now I am now one of their mentors. And with experiences that I faced, I now realize that it's the stigma that they try to associate with our job. We can really fight it. these stigmas, they don't define us, but it's the things that we do to fight them that matters most. Yeah, we are not, we are just helpers, but we are more than our job. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Leeh Ann. I just need to unmute just now. This is so, again, another very inspirational account of living in Hong Kong, of bringing your intersectional perspective on so many issues that are happening in Hong Kong. Our first speaker is Susie Liu. Liu is the director of Hong Kong Federation of Women's Center, HKFWC, a grassroots women's organization founded in 1981. And she's steering its, the organization is steering its three-pronged efforts in services, education, and advocacy. CC has devoted years of work to promoting the rights and interests of disadvantaged women in Hong Kong, such as carers, women who have undergone divorce, and new arrivals from mainland China. Under her leadership, HKFWC has recently published a study that revealed a spike of domestic violence amid COVID-19. It has expanded its service center from 2 to 5 and made a series of policy recommendations in relation to the 65th section of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, the Asia Pacific Regional Review of the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declarations, and the review of the Hong Kong Charter Government by the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. CC also holds a Master of Science degree in gender from the London School of Economics and Political Science, as well as a second degree in Chinese law from Tsinghua University. So I'll just turn the floor to CC Liu.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much for having me here to talk about basically the the major beneficial or the service users that we have been working with, which is grassroots women, and some of them are from mainland China. So let's see. Okay, so I'll skip this part because Alvin has just given a very good introduction of who we are, what the Hong Kong Federation of Women's Centers is. So basically, we combine services with advocacy, hoping that that could make a more structured changes. And apart from advocacy, we also do public education, hoping to address and tackle gender stereotypes, because that's also the origin of the situation of the making women disadvantaged in many areas in our society. So today I'll mainly focus to talk about caregivers. So who are caregivers? Who are carers? This is the definition given by the International Alliance of Carer Organizations. So from there, we can see basically it's an unpaid job. And then is someone, taking care of their family members who are unable to take care of themselves, and it is unpaid. This unpaid nature that also makes, and a lot of women that we work with are caregivers. Or put it another way, is a lot of the caregivers or carers that we got in touch with, they're actually women. And then this kind of job is usually done by women. So what's the magnitude of the issue of carers? It's always like we don't know, because there is no official statistics about caregivers. We just, could get some ideas from, bits and pieces from different, surveys, research conducted by the government. So we just try to combine with caregivers who are trying to take care of, their family members who are suffering from, different kinds of disability or being elderly, who are unable to take care of themselves, and try to combine all the figures together so that we could see there are hundreds of thousands of carers in Hong Kong. But it's just our guess. There is no official statistics about it. And groups like us have been campaigning to ask for an inclusion of a question in the upcoming census. so that we know how many caregivers in Hong Kong, so that the government could try to understand the magnitude of the issue and try to formulate policies accordingly. So what problems they face, in Hong Kong? In the past, we try to work with carers is because our past experience have told us that we start to realize there are more and more women who joined us as maybe volunteers, but then they have to take up more caregiving role, and which is quite problematic, because we see that there are negative effects on their physical health, on their mental well-being. And then they're also socially isolated because there's no one to help in the family. And then resources are not adequate. They could seek resources in the community to help them perform this role, or they have some time off for themselves, so that there's no one to take care of, helping them to take care of their family members. So it's like they work 24/7 all the time. That makes them shut off from their original social circle, and then it's also tiring. There's no time that they could take a break, and it's also very demanding on them physically. So I could try to I try to put out 2 time use study in Hong Kong done by NGOs. One is the platform Care for Carers, which we are also a member, that they did in 2018. I'm sorry for the Chinese, but it's more like, after that, they've done the time use study, try to understand, how caregivers, unpaid carers spend their 24 hours. And it's like, and then figure that they had to work for 13 hours a day, which is much longer than a full-time job. And then, this is kind of, the distribution, how they spend the time during a day. And they also compare it with, if that's not unpaid work, if they were to charge, by the service that they deliver to the family members, is like, they could get a monthly salary of equivalent to like 35,000 Hong Kong dollars. So this is one thing. And another thing is we also did a time use study last year for our organizations. And then because last year Hong Kong was started to hit by COVID-19. So we one of the questions we asked was to try to understand, the what are the consequences of COVID-19? Were they affecting women? Were they affecting caregivers particularly? And of course, you can see from here that is definitely affecting, because they have to spend more time at home taking care of their family members, doing all sorts of work. That's also because of, schoolings, school suspended. Kids will spend more time at home. So sometimes, the mothers also had to, stay at home to take care of their kids, or and other things like, because we work with grassroots women, and they are also the hardest hit from the economic downturn. Usually, they are the first to be, sacked by the employer, so that they have to return to the family and take care of their family members. So from here we can see, the difference, that they have to spend more time at home taking care of the family when COVID-19 struck Hong Kong. And then we also asked, whether there were anybody to help them. There were like 192 respondents on these questions, and only 77 told us that they got assistance from their family members, and half of them were their husband's or partner, and then some got like 11% got someone they could hire someone, a foreign domestic helper, to help them. But then, like, how much time that you receive from help from family members? So the majority, like 35%, is just like 1 to 3 hours. So it's just like, the women caregivers, they are doing much of the work by themselves and with little help from family members. And then COVID made them, stay at home longer, and then took up longer time of unpaid work. And we also did some surveys previously on the stress level faced by unpaid caregivers, and it's not good at all. Like one that we asked for, we try to understand, sorry for the typo, is mental wellness and sleeping quality of carers. And it's like out of the 249 respondents, 48% have indicated depression tendency, and 11% of them have indicated serious depression. And we did similar surveys on child caregivers. It's like carers who take care of children, and then it's like more than half of them have told us that they have depression tendency. It's not just they told us. We actually used the DAS, like the certified tool to measure someone's depression tendency. So they went through the questionnaires, and that's the score that they told us, that like more than half of them have shown depression tendency. And then most of them, like 70% of them, have told us that the stress came from taking care of their family members, their children. So we, occasionally we have heard about tragedies that caregivers or carers killed the one that they are that they have to take care of, and then they committed suicide. It's always because they couldn't find adequate resources to help them with the caring duties. So it's always like and this is also have the class implication. For those who are more resourceful, they may be able to hire more helping hands, to help them with the caregiving role. But then for those who are not so well off, they have to perform the caregiving role by themselves. And then there's not enough support from the society, from the government, from all the social welfare. Then, it is the caregivers, unpaid carers, to bear all the all the caring duties, and until a certain point that they think they cannot bear it anymore. So that's where tragedy happened. And frankly, one tragedy is already enough, and we don't want to see further tragedies. And that's why we have been working with different groups to ask for more resources and more targeted policies, like carer-oriented policies, to address the situation of caregivers. So basically, as I just mentioned, there's not enough services available, because in the past it's always like the mentality is like you have to solve the problems of yourself, of your family. It may not be an issue of the society. And then apart from that, so that's why that's inadequate resources allocated to the society to help carers. And also because of the unpaid nature, they're not protected by they're not under the MPF scheme. They usually doubt about what happened when they got old, when the carers get old. There's nothing that they could rely on, maybe until a certain point that they have to rely on the CSSA, the Social Security. But this is definitely not the road that they want to go down to. It's not the thing that they have not been working. It's just the thing that the work that they have involved in is unpaid, and it shouldn't be just this fact that the contribution to the society is not recognized. So this is also something that we see the blindness in our policies, that they don't see most of the unpaid work is performed by women, and then the contribution is not kind of like recognized under the public eyes. So this is one thing about the caregivers. But then for the women who came from the mainland China, it's also the same. Like after they come to Hong Kong, they also, many of them, who got in touch with us, they are also caregivers, full-time mom, full-time homemakers. But then that adds another layer of difficulties, is because of their connection. They don't have their own family in Hong Kong, apart from, her husband's family. So whenever anything happened, any crisis happened, there's no way they turn to in Hong Kong. You know, they may not have many friends in Hong Kong. Their family members are not in Hong Kong supporting them. So that makes them more socially isolated, especially when difficulties or crises arise. Another thing is there are also stigmas, you know, thinking that, you know, they're from the mainland, they're just coming for not working, they're lazy bodies, you know, they're trying to just to get social assistance, you know, things like that. So one of the ways that we try to address this is actually we put everybody together. Like we don't have programs like, we try not to have programs that try to single out women coming from mainland China. Is like, you know, we try to loop everybody for our different different kinds of social service. It's like, you know, after they've actually got a chance to know each other and then try to work with each other, and then
sorry for interrupting.
Okay, last word.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay,
just last sentence. That people will try to know that, okay, they're not different from us. You know, we are all contributing to our society, to our community. So that's the thing that we try to promote, the social inclusion. So I guess that's it for my brief presentation. Thank you very much.
And, thank you so much to CC Liu for this really comprehensive work. I feel like I just learned so much, but there must be even more important tasks and initiatives that HKFWC is doing, and I look forward to talking more about this. So I think what I'll do is engage with each speaker one by one, and then maybe we can have one last question that that connects the three speakers' concerns together. So for Brenda, as your colleague at HKU, I know you have been teaching a large Common Core course on sexuality and gender, as well as courses in the gender study program on transgender in Asia. So I just wonder if you could tell us more about sort of how your personal experience and scholarship inform your diverse teaching interests, and sort of how you connect the classroom and the world outside the classroom.
Yeah. So before, when I started as a teaching assistant, and so I'm very grateful to Sam Winter for actually breaking some barriers and giving me an opportunity to be able to get in the University of Hong Kong, because I think something also that some people may not know, coming from the Philippines and earning our diplomas in the Philippines is a hurdle in itself, because I think in many more progressive, or let's say developed societies or countries, sometimes our educational background, regardless if we have a PhD, may not actually be enough. So I am very grateful that I have been given that kind of opportunity. But being a trans woman also allows me to have an inside information on the stories of struggles that we experience. So it's easy for me to actually invite other women like me to talk about our experiences, because it's a way for us to give a face and a voice beyond what people are going to see from the text. Because most of our students do not identify as queer, or maybe we just don't really ask them. And for very few of them come out to us as being queer. And even fewer among the queer students who came out to us are identify as trans. So because of that, them seeing another trans voice other than hearing another trans voice other than mine gives some level of authenticity also. And then for me as a teacher, it always grounds me, because through empathy, I think empathy is a very powerful tool that I have utilized over the years, because it's not just about understanding the narratives through the text, but it's also understanding the narratives through the experience. And that is a place where I can actually draw the connection, and I can continue talking about these experiences or these narratives long before those speakers have gone. Actually, one of the speakers that we invited in 2013 or 2014 in our Common Core is not only a very good friend of mine, but we are part of STRAP. And in 2014, she was murdered in the Philippines. One of the reasons of which is because she does sex work. And we we have not really seen the justice in that case before. And even in the Philippines, it was very difficult to keep talking about that case because the family is also not that open to talk about the murder. But that will be an unforgettable connection, because imagine we brought her over to Hong Kong to HKU to talk about her experience as a trans woman, as a mother, soon to be a trans mother. The difficulties of which also is a lot to talk about, to share. And then later on I would start talking about her death. And her death actually also reminds us of the other violence experienced by trans people around the world. So like towards November, I talk about Transgender Day of Remembrance. And this time when I talk, and each year when I talk about it, there's just so much pain, but at the same time, hope that that the students of Hong Kong would become instruments also in talking about the struggles and oppression experienced by trans people.
So I think Brenda actually addressed all the questions that I already prepared for your part. I was gonna ask you more about sort of how your role and your personhood, your teaching and research challenge the dominant perception of who counts as a woman, and your anecdotes, actually the real life story and the issues of violence against trans people. I think that really brings to the forefront. And I really love your points on empathy. I think this focus on empathy actually really connects to Leeh Ann's photography, and also the essay that I read by you called My Life as a Migrant Worker. So in that essay and photo essay, you mentioned the shock of first arriving in Hong Kong and the experience of being stigmatized as merely a migrant worker. Could you share with us how photography as a medium enables you to work through these feelings of isolation and so forth? And also that very powerful shot that you, you forgot to show your slides of your art, of your photography. Would you like to share that now, so you can also answer the first question that I just asked?
Yes, let me show the photos.
So if you can do the share screen and share your...
Is the share screen working?
Yeah, and if you can click on each photo and then maybe do
just like when I first, are they enlarged now? I mean, are they in full in the on screen? Because on my side it is. Can you see the photos?
Yeah, but somehow it's not enlarged. Can you maybe double click on the photo number 1 and then do like a arrow and point to the next? Yeah, you can.
There. Is it enlarged?
I think you might be sharing the wrong screen.
Okay, let me just check. Okay, wait. Share screen. Is it working now? Or it's still not working?
Yeah, we could see each photo in a really small size. See, well, maybe we can send a link to the open chat later. So yeah, so each, anyway, the photo, yeah, this one, great.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, now we can see it.
Yeah,
that's
so
actually the photo that relates to, yeah, could you say something more about this photo?
Yeah, because this when I first arrived here in Hong Kong, it really shocked me because of the fact that, like, as a domestic worker, I realized that we don't really have that 100% freedom. I mean, we are not really like allowed to say anything that we want to say. We cannot really like express our thoughts because it might get us in trouble. So on my part, it was hard for me. So like I just decided to take photos to somehow express the emotions that I have inside, the thoughts, and instead of using myself as the subject for each photos, I decided to use the everyday scenes here in Hong Kong to express these thoughts. For example, this photo, as you can see, it's a kid it's in the playground. When I first saw this scene, I realized that, oh, I'm just like that kid. Because if you are going to look at the photo closely, it's like the kid is encapsulated in its own bubble. In this, he's just like there in that small bubble looking out. And somehow I saw myself in that situation. Then another thing is this. This man, it was taken in Bangkok. I remember I was lost because was my first time going there. But I call this photo acting blind. As I mentioned earlier, like domestic workers are being faced with different types of abuses. But sometimes we just have to act blind, like we are blindfolded, and just pretend that these abuses are not happening. So we just continue what we are doing. Just continue doing our job. And this, seeing clearly, it's like with these abuses, it's like for someone who has eye defect or yes, something with a problem in his vision. Like for these abuses, do we have to be like this person who needs a glasses to see them clearly? And I call this one like separated. So you can see like in every like yeah, there's this person, there's another person. Like I feel that in Hong Kong, we are here. The domestic workers are on this. Like I can see this as the different levels in the society, from lowest to the highest. And for the domestic workers, we are here. We are at the lowest. We are at the bottom. Then I call it guarded. Like in some situations, in some households, there are a lot of CCTVs that follow every domestic worker's move inside the house. So it's just like this. This is a domestic worker, and this is the guard. It's what keeping close eye to the domestic worker and her actions. And also this is a selfie taken in Central. Like no matter what we do, there's like this thin line separating the domestic workers to other members of the society.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I call this light and shadow. Like in our life, it's not always the dark side. There's also this light side, bright side. And swimming through the dark waters. As a migrant worker, when we left our home country, we are not really sure what kind of life we are gonna face here in Hong Kong. So it's like swimming through dark waters. We don't know if we will have a good employer, a good life, or the opposite. But if we focus on this, our goal, no matter how dark the water is, we still continue to swim and to reach this goal. I think that's what most of the domestic workers here in the city do. Yeah, and for this one, it's a situation wherein the domestic worker stayed here in Hong Kong like for 20 or 30 years, that their past, their youth, just passed by without them realizing it. And this is like their present now. Yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you. And in the
sorry, I think
yeah,
if you notice, most of my photos are the subjects are other people.
okay, great. Yes, I think that's what's interesting about your work, right? It's not just about yourself being rendered or marginalized as a gender and racialized other, as you mentioned, as a citizen class, second-class citizen, but you actually point to this powerful notion of relationality, or of sort of reflecting the gaze back on others, right, living in Hong Kong. I think
It's like when I first...
one question I have for Cici. Yeah, maybe we should move to the last part. Yeah, we can come back for last 5 minutes for Q&A, but I do have one last question for Cici in the interest of time. How do you see HKFWC and your own leadership role addressing the needs of diverse women across class, racial, marital status, and divides in Hong Kong? And what are some of the challenges that are posed by COVID-19? You mentioned COVID-19 and sort of time span and the difference in terms of how much time is devoted to care work. Yeah, if you can say more.
Yeah, well, it's very difficult questions because, you know, problems are everywhere. It's like, you know, it's not just, you know, one sector, it's actually everywhere. And then COVID-19 kind of like amplify the issues, the problems. So what we're trying to do is to first think of, you know, try to resolve those with immediate needs, you know, say, for example, domestic violence, because COVID-19, we came across with more calls for assistance during COVID because people were locked at home, and then there were more conflicts, more chances to get conflicts. So the more cases of domestic violence that, you know, came to us. So what we do is, first thing always is try to think of something that try to tackle the immediate needs, you know, where safety measures, if they need financial assistance, we try to find, you know, resources to provide with them, you know, things like that. Try to settle the most urgent issues. And then next is to, you know, bring similar people together, you know, people with similar background together, so that they're not feeling so isolated. They have a circle of friends, at least, you know, that they could talk to each other, to share the problems, share the issues. That could also release their stress, you know, mentally, and psychological, you know, emotions would become better when they have friends, you know, supporting them. And then third is to try to think of, you know, service models that could help them, you know, try to scale it up, you know, do it as a kind of like service, and seek fundings, you know, supports from funders, donors to roll out the services. And once we see, you know, some success with the services, and that's also difficult for us, is not just to do it, but also to document it, to try to produce evidence, you know, so that when we say anything that's supported by evidence, that's evidence-based, to show that this is working, is work. So, and then take that model to the government to see, you know, if they would buy in, or if it's too soon. You know, it's always like that. You know, I guess everybody who has been involved in advocacy would know that it's a long process. So it's better to try to do something first, showcase that, and then try to, you know, maybe get more fundings to, you know, scale that up, or until a point that the government would try to, you know, approach you and talk to you and try to understand what you're doing, you know, things like that. And another thing is to tackle the you know, the mindset, the stereotype, gender stereotype in the society. And it's even a harder job because you're trying to change the mind of everybody, and then people may not know it. They may not be aware that, you know, they are sexist. You know, they may not be aware that, you know, they are actually gender blind. And then is actually a very long road to do. And I'm sure, with everybody involved here, at least, in this seminar, that at least people, we're like-minded people, and then we could start from ourselves, try to influence the ones that, who are close to us, try to talk to them more often, and try to crack down all those barriers in terms of, gender, race, class, etc.
Great, thank you. And I was just informed I already know that we will run over time a little bit, overrun a little bit, because we have such amazing group of panelists, and there are so many questions that we all want to ask you. So right now, we still have 5 minutes for Q&A. You can either signal it with your raise hand motions from Zoom, or you can just type in the chat box to make sure you type it to everyone. So we still have 5 minutes. The floor is open.
Hello, this is Emery from EOC.
Yeah.
I have a question for Sissi. I know that women who have gone through divorce are among the many grassroots women you have served over the years. And I read that in 2019, I think, you organized a series of art workshops and also an art exhibition as a medium of empowerment for them. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Oh yes, we were very lucky that we've got a gallery who offers free space for us to use that space. So we start to think back, how could we use that opportunity? And then one thing is of course we want to tell the stories about women who have been divorced, who are undergoing all sorts of difficulties with the problems, that they go through divorce. Actually, we just did a press conference this morning to talk about the difficulties that women or ever, people who try to get a divorce, during COVID. And feel free to, go to our Facebook and then listen to that press conference. Anyway, and apart from the difficulties that lies in the administrative measures, and all the divorce has to go through the court in Hong Kong, which is time consuming and expensive. And also all the stigma, with that. It's always like, when women who came to us saying that, they're thinking about a divorce, they always think that I'm a loser because I can't keep my marriage. I can't manage, my life. I'm not a woman, I'm not a good mother, I'm not a good wife, things like that, all those gender stereotypes, trying to define what womanhood, what motherhood should be. So any deviation from it is a loser, is something like that. So for us, it's always like, try to try to tackle the immediate issues. And then next, we also have to try to unpack all those thoughts behind, so that, they could really understand or think about it, and then stand up and think that I'm not a loser. It's not, that's not just one way of life that a woman should go through. It's, there are always different opportunities that I could, go to, and then I could try to develop myself, things like that. So we just think that, okay, in that case, why not we use that opportunity, the free gallery, the space, and then to show, okay, let the women tell their own stories. Maybe it's about, their path to go through the divorce. Maybe it's more of the difficulties, that they have actually encountered, or maybe the struggle, the struggle that they have to go through, because, they're putting kind of like, ending a love story, what the struggles that go inside, what were the things that in your mind, in your heart, in your emotions, things like that. So and then we provide some training, like art form presentation training for those women, and then they use different forms. Some of them that used visual arts, some of them recorded their own stories, and then some of them make some like installation, things like that. And then we will able to, use that space to showcase that. And we also ran theater, some like drama, like a section for people, who are not, interested in this issue, to actually think about themselves, to put them in the shoes that if they were to go through a divorce, what were happening in their minds. So we also use this kind of art form and to let others try to put themselves in, other people's shoes. And we also did like human library, and then invited women as, book, to share their lives with, people who are interested in this. So we think that is quite good and empowering itself, and empowering, not just that, we use some like more interesting ways to showcase the stories of women. And then the women involved in this, they think that, okay, they could actually have a chance to talk about themselves, to showcase. And then it's also something like, okay, I have gone through one more step, and it's very empowering. So that's the thing, we try to use art to kind of like work with women. Yes, and I'm sure like Leeh Ann, has also a lot of, this to share and to tell by using different art form like photography to talk about their story, her stories, and it's empowering as well.
So any one last question for either Leeh Ann or Brenda before we transition to the next panel? Is there any? In addition with what I shared, this is from Leeh Ann, I think you can all read it, but let me read it out. The main reason why I chose to use everyday life in Hong Kong as my subjects to tell my story and message as a migrant, because I believe that it is a better way for me to be connected to the city and to find my place there. Any other questions or comments? If not, I think this is actually a really wonderful way to end this panel. And I do hope that we'll have more opportunity to pair up with EOC again to discuss this important aspects of all of our life and from different perspectives, and to engage with intersectionality, both in the academic context, but beyond also. Thank you. So I'll turn over to CGED staff.
Thank you, Alvin. And a big thank you to all the speakers for that enlightening dialogue. I think you've raised a lot of important issues for us to reflect on. And I think it's now a good time to do just that, for a break and also unwind a little bit. So we will resume in 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes at around 3:45 p.m., 3:45 p.m., if that's okay with everyone. Thank you. Second panel today, entitled Visual Storytelling, Photography as Empowerment. We are honored to have Dr. Roslyn to be our moderator. Dr. Hammers is Associate Professor in the Department of Art History at HKU. May I invite Dr. Hammers to introduce our panelists, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Can you all hear me, I hope?
Yes.
Great. So allow me to begin with a note of thanks to Georgina Chalin and to Lee Chong for their kind assistance with this program. I'm delighted to wish everyone a happy International Women's Day one day early. And I'd also like to say that it's a great honor for me to participate in this seminar that addresses the importance of human dignity and expression for women in Hong Kong and ultimately globally. As noted, this session focuses on visual storytelling, photography as empowerment. Now, there's been a slight change in order of the speakers. If you know them, I'm just going to say we will start with Kawaljot Kaur, move on to Lydia Kibandi, and then we will end with Nicole Wong. Okay, so let me start with a brief introduction. Kawaljot Kaur is a final year undergraduate student at HKU, majoring in comparative literature and journalism. She was born and raised in Hong Kong, and she didn't really consider herself knowing Chinese until the age of 12. When she started learning Chinese in a more effective, systematic way. Gradually, she came to realize the change she could make as a woman of color who speaks the local language. She now produces her own podcast, Roadside Rumors, where she interviews guests from different backgrounds on an extensive array of issues, such as inadequacies with the Chinese language curriculum for non-Chinese students in primary and secondary schools, how inclusive universities in Hong Kong are, and so on. She's also an alumnus of Rise Up, an initiative developed by the NGO KELY support group to help non-Chinese youth in Hong Kong develop creative and problem-solving skills through photography workshops. So now I turn to invite Kawal to begin her presentation.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I will be sharing the photos that I took for the exhibition. Let me try to share my screen. Can you guys see the photos?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Roz, for introducing me just now. So to give you guys a little bit of background, when I took these photos, I had like 10 models, 10 different models. 5 of them were men and 5 were women. And I decided to choose these models because I feel like sometimes when you want to express yourself, a photo can express yourself. You can use a photo to express yourself much better than words when it comes to storytellings. And I already like using creative means to express myself anyway and to connect with people. And I feel like being behind the camera allowed me to capture moments to do so. So when I was taking these photos, a lot of the models were rather shy, and some of them felt like they didn't know the right poses or like they didn't know how to act behind the camera. And it wasn't until I told them to just act themselves, then when they like relaxed and acted themselves, it was then the photos actually came out better. And I feel like that was a moment of empowerment as well, because most of the times we try to act in a way that society expects us to, or like the way that we are told that we should act, and which is why my models kind of struggled at first. But after I told them to be themselves, they felt more, they performed better. And these are so a lot of these models are my friends or my family members. So this is a photo of my mom, and she basically came to Hong Kong after getting married 20 so years ago. And for her, like growing up, like I never really thought that we were different compared to like other people in Hong Kong. But now that I'm growing up and like now that I'm having more open conversations with my family or with my mom, like I start to realize that as like South Asian women, our struggles are not usually talked about, and there are a lot of like struggles that we go through that go unnoticed because people aren't aware of our situations in Hong Kong. So I feel like the opportunities I've been given because of my parents moving to Hong Kong, I would like to use them as a platform to further make more opportunities for myself. And some of the other models I have were students of HKU or students currently pursuing their education in Hong Kong. And then I also have like some friends who are working in Hong Kong, and they're currently working in Hong Kong. And I feel like by doing this photography exhibition, I had the chance to like open up conversations and talk to them about how they feel like, living or working or studying in Hong Kong, and how their experiences are affected because of their identities. And yeah, I think that's it for my part. I'll just wait until the Q&A section to answer more questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so very much. We're going to go through the other two speakers and then we'll return for Q&A. All right, the next speaker who will be giving a brief presentation is Leeh Ann. She is a global program director at Lensational, a nonprofit social enterprise that works to elevate the voices of underrepresented women across Asia and Africa through visual storytelling. The organization has conducted photography and videography training in more than 20 countries and regions, building mutual support networks and monetization opportunities for women living on the margins of society. While Lensational's work in Hong Kong focuses primarily on migrant domestic workers, Leeh has worked hands-on with teenage girls in Matara, one of the oldest slum areas in Nairobi, Kenya, as well as the Maasai women living in conservation areas to contribute to community-led conservation by sharing their stories. She holds a degree in business information technology and is currently pursuing photojournalism at the New York Institute of Photography. So I would now like to invite Leeh to give her 5-minute presentation, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Rose. I want to first thank you, everyone, for giving me this opportunity to be here. And I also want to give a special thanks to my colleagues from Hong Kong, Rachel, who unfortunately was not able to join us today, but also Leeh Ann, who works with us as a mentor. And yeah, thank you for allowing me to be here today. So I am just going to take a few minutes to speak briefly, and I think that Rose has done pretty much a great job at saying a lot of the work that we do. As she has said, we're a nonprofit social enterprise that elevates the voices of women using photography and storytelling. We try to bridge the knowledge gap that exists in understanding how women are disproportionately affected by socioeconomic and environmental issues, and we do this using photography. The main activities involved in our programs are training, where we train the women in photography and storytelling. The second activity is equipping them with cameras that are donated to us all throughout the year. And the third way is presenting them opportunities to share their work, whether it's using our online gallery, exhibitions, or commissioned assignments that come to us through partnerships. So we have been working in about 25 countries, where we've been able to work with about 1,000 women. But we have since changed our model to focus on fewer countries, to focus more on the depth of impact as opposed to the breadth of impact. And we're currently working in Ghana, Hong Kong, and Kenya, but we're hoping to expand into more countries as resources and the time allow. I think that I'm gonna just leave it there for now and allow more questions during the Q&A. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Wait. Oh no, I'm unmuted. Thank you very much, Leeh. Okay, I am now going to introduce my colleague, the third panelist, Professor Nicole Wong, who is a professor and chair of the Department of Comparative Literature at the University of Hong Kong. Professor Wong's interests include issues around human agencies undergoing and experiencing extraordinary times. She's done a monograph, she's written a monograph titled Women, War, Domesticity, Shanghai Literature and Popular Culture of the 1940s. And she's also done an edited volume titled Written on Water, a collection of essays by Eileen Zhang. Please let me invite Professor Huang, Nicole, to give her a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ross. It's an honor to be here. Let me keep that hat of comparative literature chairperson on me just for one second to say that I'm very proud to be on this panel because one of my other fellow panelists is a conflict major. So I'm I'm very impressed by Kawal, your work. And I really hope that more conflict majors will do the kind of work that you do in making the impact that they are making. So we like to see more majors like you. So I will take the hat off. Back to being a panelist. So I'm proud to be on this panel. I don't know how many of you in the audience have seen the exhibition that are current online exhibition. Also, there is a physical exhibition that is going on right now. Also, the concurrent with the online exhibition, but the physical one is downstairs from me. It's the ground floor of the Ranwanshaw Tower on Centennial campus. If you have a chance to, if you happen to be in this part of the campus, do come by and take a look. It's very interesting. The title of the exhibition, the English title is The Way We Are, but the Chinese title has two characters, right? Zhang Sheng, right? Zhen Xiang in Mandarin Chinese. So it's not really a bisyllabic word. It's not one word. It's actually two words connected by a spacer, okay, separation dot. So it's Zheng and Sheng. Two different words. I find that very interesting, the Chinese title. It's not a direct translation of the English title of the exhibition, right? Zheng, the truth. We kind of live in an age that we are bombarded by information. There is no shortage of information, and yet we are in this very troubled age where truth is often hard to come by, right? There's a constant struggle on a daily basis and try to dig out what exactly has happened and what exactly is going on. So this constant quest for what is the truth, right? But in this context, in the context of these photographs that we are looking at, the word Zheng also means authenticity, right? Kawal as a local, deeply rooted in the local community, that there is authenticity in the experiences that you are working to represent, right? So this Hong Kong is not complete if we do not listen to these other voices, right? So there's something about authenticity of the experiences we represented. So the word zheng, right? Assume the image, capturing of the images, capturing of the projection. Here really is where the representation comes in. And this is where I think the empowerment, right? The panel is called Photography as Empowerment. This is where empowerment comes in, because these are the means for us to actually use to capture the experiences that are authentic, that are deeply rooted in our daily experiences. So I'm rather struck by the title of this exhibition. and your work, your photographs. I actually stumbled into your podcasts and I got a kick out of it. For those of you in the audience, if you haven't had a chance to listen in to Kawal's podcast, it's called Roadside Rumors, and please do, and you will truly enjoy it. And I think the first episode, April 2019, the first episode, right? It was on diversity at HKU, and really hope the senior administration of this university will listen in. And just to see, just to hear what students are really thinking, you know, Asia's global university, what we are really about. So, so I really hope that people will listen in. And the subjects are very interesting, you know, such as going vegan in Hong Kong and also the romance. There's a very sweet couple getting married early in their 20s. So talking about intimacy in the age of coronavirus, queer sex, and the most recent episode focuses on domestic helpers. I'm very struck by the podcast. I'm not really a podcast person, you know, I don't usually listen in, but this is truly fascinating. So I look at your photographs in the context of all these. The truth, the collective effort of seeking a truth and empowerment, the means of representation, and also your podcast. You know, we don't really, we not only look at the other Hong Kong, we also listen in. We also listen to the voices of the other Hong Kong. The photographs really, I just realized the photo of the housewife, the Indian housewife, that's your mother. That's how fascinating. And you really haven't gone far. You take your camera into your local communities and you often photograph those who are the closest, right? Really, people you know rather well. So the journeys are arriving as such photographs, right? Even though they're showcasing these individuals, the familiar individuals oftentimes in their familiar environment, doing what they do on a daily basis. But the photographing, the process of representation is rather deliberate, right? I can imagine that each photo session, you know, what it takes to plan it out and to eventually, all the effort, eventually arriving at the captured moment, right? It wasn't random. Let's just say the process is very deliberate. So I think these images are as much about these people you're capturing as they are really about you, the woman behind the camera. So what I'm seeing, you know, what I'm also hearing in the podcast, I'm thinking of this is rather a pretty ambitious project. If you carry on with it into an oral history project, right? Complete with words. I would love to see more extensive network narratives, more expanded narratives, and especially how you decide to situate the subject against that particular background and that particular moment. And the very detailed, very interesting, beautiful details like the soft lamp, right? The accent lamp and that coffee shop. And that wasn't there for no reason. There's a reason the lamp was there for you to be captured. So I'm very interested in writing also, and together with the images and voices. So turning into an oral history project that I think is still growing and very interesting, very fascinating. So I'm very honored to be discussing these works, and I look forward to more discussion in the Q&A session. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm having trouble unmuting. Thank you very much, Nicole. All right, I'm going to start this off by asking one question to Nicole, and then one to Lydia. And then I have some questions perhaps for Nicole's orientation or methodology of looking at text and image, but I'm going to put that on the back burner. I'd like to focus more perhaps on the women who are making our narratives of empowerment. So Kawal, I'm very interested in how I get a sense of the roles of occupations in sort of the photos that you've taken that are very personal. You seem to have students or, you know, people either studying, such as students, or other people engaged in some sort of, you know, productivity, some sort of labor. Why do you think you are so keen on having representations of your models? Mostly, it seems to me, at work, perhaps, or doing things. And how does this interest in perhaps seeing people in terms of what they do, a reflection of the title, the way we are, to use the English title?
Yeah, so is it okay if I share again? I just want to talk about
Yes,
yeah. Okay, so yeah, so as you guys can notice, like a lot of my photos, it's usually my I told my models to go about as their daily routines. Like I just told them to tell me what they would do on a normal day. So in this photo, it's like my friend, this is a photo taken in Temple Street, and she talked about how she's lived here for whole, sorry. She talked about how when I was talking to her, she was telling me how she lived in Temple Street her whole life, and to her, like this place is really important. And she was talking about how her family lives there, and how like Jordan is a cultural conclave. I think I learned this word recently. So it's basically where a lot of people of the same ethnic backgrounds live in. So she was talking about Jordan and how important it is to her. And then there are other photos such as this. This is also my friend, and I asked her what she likes most about Hong Kong, and she was talking about how she really enjoys the food. Even though she struggles to read the menu, she still like loves going to Chinese restaurants, and she likes trying new dishes. And I actually like introduced her to a lot of dishes that day because I had to like translate to her, but it was a really fun experience. And that was like one thing that she told me that she really enjoys doing in Hong Kong. So in a lot of my photos, I try to ask them to do things that they would do on a regular day, because it's not like we're any different. We are like locals, you know. It's just that maybe we look a little bit different, but a lot of the times the things that we do, or the transportation that we take, the schools that we go to, or like the restaurants we eat at, they're all the same as the other locals here. And as someone like born and raised in Hong Kong, like I feel like I always did consider myself a local, but it wasn't until like I got into like high school and I was the only Indian in the whole school where I started noticing that different, even though I don't see myself that different. And so yeah, like I feel like our differences shouldn't be the reason that we don't you know, we don't integrate with each other in the society. So this is actually my brother, and he plays hockey, and he's been playing for like many years now. And I recently asked him, like, do you feel weird like when you're playing with like Chinese people on the field? And then he just told me like initially he used to feel a little like shy because he has kept his hair long. We come from a Sikh family, and so initially like he would feel a little like uncomfortable or awkward when people would ask him about it, but he has just come to like embrace it. And he also speaks Cantonese, so now he can use like Cantonese to explain to other people like why he has to keep his hair, or like how his religion is. So it's kind of like interesting to see like how he's so much younger than me, but he also is going through similar experiences. And where like when I talk to my mom, she's like so much older than I am, but she also has really similar experiences. Like for example, yeah, like for example, when my mom, she doesn't really speak Chinese or English that well, but she speaks just enough to like go to the supermarket or go to the market. And when I went to the wet market with her, I just told her to act normal, and she was feeling really shy. And then she told me that she has like this one particular stall where she's really friends with the shopkeeper. So I was like, okay, you can just go to her and just act like you're having a conversation, or just buy like something. And then so she told me like this lady has been working here for really long, and every time my mom goes shopping, she would go to this lady. And it's like this friendship to people who don't really like speak any language, like any language, any same language. Yeah, like the lady doesn't speak English that well, and my mom doesn't speak Cantonese that well, but it was so like interesting to see that they get along, and it's like this newborn like friendship. And then like I had like another friend. Oh, so this shopkeeper, he's actually really like really important because a few years ago, like I started doing a lot of work related to ethnic minority rights in Hong Kong. So I used to do these walking tours around Jordan and Yamate, and the tours would start in Jordan and they would end in Yamate. And this shopkeeper, he runs an Asian grocery store, and we would always one of the checkpoints would always be at his store. And I remember the first time going to him, and like when I was doing my research to decide which points I wanted to take my participants to, because I was the tour guide. So I remember I went to his shop, and then I had to like ask him a lot of questions about his personal life and his experiences living in Hong Kong. And initially he was really like shy and really reluctant to like open up to me. But then after like doing the tour like a few times, like he just like kind of became like a friend, and he would just like we would actually like catch up, or like I would go to his shop to like get some groceries from my mom. So we just like became really good friends. And like his story is also really interesting because he's lived in Hong Kong for a really long time, and he opened his own shop. And he was talking about how like a lot of local Chinese people also come to shop at his place, not just like South Asians. So it was also really interesting to see. And then I have this friend who works as a food delivery a delivery man right now, and he doesn't speak Cantonese. He doesn't speak he's a Nepalese person who speaks English and Nepalese, and he came to Hong Kong from Singapore like 5 years ago. And he like while talking to him, he also opened up about his struggles of how it was difficult for him to look for a job, because sometimes like even when he passes by like places that are hiring, if the poster is in Chinese, he can't even read the hiring sign. So like it was really like shocking, and like it was like fascinating for me to see that we're all like so different, but at the same time the struggles are similar in some ways. So yeah, like I feel like this project was really eye-opening for me, and it also like kind of like created the space for me to like have really open conversations with people that are close to me. Like even though these people are like my really good friends or they're my family members, like normally I wouldn't sit and talk about these things with them. So having this opportunity was a really great chance for me to like get to know them and like understand the kind of like place that we're living in. And I hope like through this I can also like kind of like see like where my role fits in and what I can do to like make it better. Because like I feel like still like as someone who speaks like both languages, I do want to kind of be the bridge between both communities, and like, you know, try to like maybe like if I can help in like the conversations that people want to have, then let me like that would be great. So yeah, I mean that's why I chose to just let them do what they would do on a regular day, like a regular day, and just let me take a photo of what they were doing. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. That's really fun. Well, the photo, you know, on one hand, you're saying people were shy and everything, but the photos really do look very personal in a way that you have connected with this, the what appears to me that the people who are your models, as you refer to them, they seem to be really very able to allow themselves the pleasure of relaxing and getting their photo taken by you. So it's very nice. I'm going to switch over now to talk with Lydia, and I have a question for you. I've managed to, I've looked at some of your wonderful exhibitions that you have, or photos that you have presumably trained or helped women take, and I was deeply touched by the sort of humanity that the women are also putting into the photos, speaking of photos of empowerment. So Lydia, I'm wondering, what do you think you have learned and what have you taught about representing the underrepresented? I mean, how does this work inspire you? How do you train, as you would say, the next generation of female storytellers from the margins across Africa? So how does that work for you, and what motivates you, and what gets you going? Oh, Lydia, you're going to need to unmute. Yeah, I have a problem with that too, but.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Rose. So I'm going to start with the first question you asked about what I have learned about representing the underrepresented. You know, like the term says, we're representing them. So we're a very critical role to represent these women, and any misrepresentation of them would fail them just as much as maybe systems that they've relied on for long have failed them. So it's very important for us to be able to represent them the way that they need to be represented. So the second thing that I have learned is we have to, as we train and as we, develop content with them and the stories that they share, we have to lay off and set aside any presumptions or biases that we have about a particular community and allow ourselves to learn from them. And in this way, then we are able to represent them in the way that they want to be represented, as opposed to how we think they would want to be represented. And the thing you find is that despite, for example, I'm from Kenya, and even when we launched the different programs like with the Maasai and the teenage girls, what I thought I knew about them was completely different from what I learned on the ground. And that's very important for us and for us to convey that. I think what inspires me the most about this work is the personal connections I make with the women. As trainers and as people who facilitate for them to tell these stories, we have to connect with the stories, otherwise we're not able to tell them from the same point of view as they would. So the personal connections that comes from their stories and from speaking to them just as other women as I am, I think that's truly what inspires me. And Brenda in the first panel mentioned empathy. And I think that goes without saying that you have to have that. So that truly inspires me to carry on with our work. So how do we conduct our training? So in the different countries that we are in, there are different, the training model is tailored based on the needs of the women in that program or that country. But I think there are very key things that we aim to achieving. So basic photography skills and advanced photography skills, and most of all, the storytelling bit, that's very important for us to be able to achieve all across the different programs, regardless of the different models that we have. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, yes, it has. Thank you so very much. I think the work that you're doing is really quite extraordinary. And I think that actually also for Kawal, as well as even for perhaps Nicole to consider, I think what's, this issue of empathy is truly an important, necessary component about listening and hearing and seeing aspects that are underrepresented, and we have to expand and become better viewers and better listeners. And so I'm wondering, just as a way to think about empowerment through visual storytelling, how can we create better audiences? How can we create better viewers and better listeners in order to have what we are presenting be seen and heard? I'm wondering if you have any ideas about how to make this even more, have a greater impact, a more profound impact in society. Lydia, would you like to start with that? Do you have any thoughts on that, if I may?
Yeah, so I believe that, for outsiders, who are viewing these images and these exhibitions, I truly believe that it's important for us to also just lay aside, like I was saying, our biases and pre-assumptions regarding, what we thought that we know. And second, I think that it's truly important, like you're saying, to really listen keenly. For example, Leeh Ann is an alumni of Sensational, and I have seen her images, but I have never connected as well as I have done today when she spoke about them. And that's because of listening. And I think that that's what viewers need to also do. It's just listen and try to connect on a much personal level with the stories that are being told.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I think that's very important, and I agree with you. And I'm delighted to hear that you and Leeh Ann have connected, because I did notice that both of you I heard actually, both of you were with Lensational, and I was very intrigued by that. I'm going to ask the same question though to Kaur. How do you think you mentioned you wanted to act like a bridge. How do you think you can become a better bridge, or how do you think you can get viewers engaged rather than just people who see things, but actually observe and see things to, more have a greater impact?
I think for me, like one thing I've learned like over the past couple of years is to recognize my privilege. Like before I used to feel like, oh, like I'm like a ethnic minority. Like honestly, even this term, like I don't know how I feel about it anymore. Like it's kind of like people, like I don't think it's a bad word, like a bad term, but it's just that I've heard this word since I entered like Form 1 in high school. Like they used to like refer to me as like the Lamayo Hosan, like which literally means like the ethnic minority student, or like the non-Chinese speaking student. And I feel like before I used to feel bad and I used to not like it as much, but recently like I've just learned to like recognize my privilege. And I feel like the fact that I get to go like receive an education, or like the fact that I get to like attend, like I'm studying gender studies, and which is like part of the reason why where I learned like all about like intersectionality and like feminism, or like like how it's affecting us. And it's really important for me to like know where I stand in this. And just like Lydia said, like listening is another really good example. Like you need to listen to people, not just like hear what they're saying, but actually like listen to what they're saying and understand it. And like maybe like talk and like listen to what other people are saying, and see like how you can be of help to their struggles. And you need to like understand that everyone might not be like everyone's struggling about something, right? So it's important for us to like help each other out, and just create like safe spaces for people to talk about their issues without feeling like they don't belong, or they like, yeah, that's what I feel.
Thank you very much.
I'm nervous.
No, you're doing lovely. I understand it's a little, but it's Zoom. It's like it's real and not real at the same time. So Nicole, I notice, of course, that in your scholarship, you are very much about listening to voices, and you're responding to the photography as well, and seeing things in it. And I'm wondering if you have any particular insight, particularly given that you are an employed college or university professor. And so this need for us to figure out ways to make sure that the stories are heard and seen. And I know your own research certainly engages with that, but I'm wondering if you have any insights you might care to offer us as viewers.
Yes, absolutely. I think I was just actually listening. I was going to say that the Zoom experience is very real, because we look, we also listen. We at least switch on two of our major senses, right? Our hearing and our seeing, right? But there's more that is lacking. I was, so Kawal, as you were narrating your photograph, how you approach each subject, you basically have come alive. These photographs really bring forth all of our senses of capturing the experiences that are authentic, right? Not only seeing and listening, but also smelling, the vegetable market, the wet market. And Leeh Ann's photographs also has quite a bit of the scenes where all the senses have coming into play. So I think it is not just a visual storytelling in this case, right? So it really is, we have to be able to engage all of our senses, and there really isn't one of them that should be privileged. It really is about using all of our capacities as a human being to engage, right? So the familiar cliche about a picture says 1,000 words. I don't believe that. There is no such a thing. Picture does not say 1,000 words if you don't make it say 1,000 words. So I think, again, if I want to say something, that I think these photographs are as much about the people that you capture as they are about you, yourself. So you coming forth to make your voices heard, I mean, it's tremendous. So I'd love to see more. I'd love to see maybe from Kawal a photo essay that coming out of these photographs and your podcast experience, so somehow stringing together these photos, these images, these sounds and furry into a kind of a structure, a kind of a narrative that has all that is, it comes alive, all the experience, all the authenticity of experiences comes alive in such a future product. So. Yeah.
Sounds like Kawal has more homework.
Please do not see this as homework.
I just want to take this chance to say thank you to Dr. Huang for your kind words, and I feel like it's really encouraging and motivating, and I feel like it definitely encouraged me, and it gave me a lot of new perspectives on things, and I feel like, yeah, why should I stop here? I can do so much more with what I already have. So I'm so grateful I'm so honored I got to listen to Dr. Huang talk today, and thank you so much for all your kind words. Yeah.
If I may, I would like to end this more on, well, I'm going to open it up to the floor in just a minute, but I have one more question, and actually it's for Lydia. Lydia, you said that you wanted to empower 100 women by the end of this year. I believe in one of the things that you have written. How are you doing on this goal? Or was this last year's goal? Or is it this year's goal? Where are you?
So this was actually last year's goal. And I suppose when we said we wanted to empower, we were only thinking about the women that we would train in photography. But first and foremost, COVID happened, and it allowed us first to rethink, what that term empower really means. Not only does it mean the women that we're training, but also the women who, through the stories that are shared, are in one way or another impacted. So we focused mostly on skill development to enable the women to really communicate their points of view very effectively. I think hand in a camera is one thing, but then helping them to really use their emotions and how to reflect that is a completely different thing. And so I think that's what we mainly focused on. We didn't end up training 100 women. We trained less than that, but the impact was really great, and the stories that have come from that have been amazing. And I'll just mention one because I had a talk of disability earlier today. So one of the stories that one of our photographers here in Nairobi worked on was on children living with disabilities and the stigma around it. And we had only 3 mothers who were willing to talk about it. And by the time that she was done, talking about the issues, we had, about 10 more mothers who had come up front and said, I've been hiding my child because they have a disability, but now I want to speak about it. And I think that goes to these numbers that we're seeing empower. It's not only the women that we train, but also the women whose lives are touched through the stories.
Well, again, that's giving us definitely, as Brenda was talking about, hope and again, perhaps more opportunities for expanding empathy. Excellent. Well, this is lovely. I'm running over. I'm terribly sorry. I'm going to open the questions for the floor. I hope I didn't take too much time, but does anybody want to ask a question? You can either raise your hand by way of the Zoom thing, whatever you click, I don't know, the icon, or you could type a message in if anybody has anything they'd like to say or ask. If any of the panelists might like to even talk amongst themselves, have their own questions for each other, all of the larger panelists, I mean, not just these panelists, but Leeh Ann and Cece and, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the Brenda, yes. Alternatively, perhaps we might move to Dr. Lee Chong, who may be having a wrap up of the whole sessions for both today. I'd like to say, of course, thank you to everyone, but especially the three panelists who shared their work and their insight about how to have the voices and the imagery of women to be made empowering and empathetic and hopeful for future development and impact. Leeh, I'm not sure if you're ready or if you'd like to start now.
Yes, I'm ready. Thanks, Ross.
Sure.
So thank you all very much. This is an insightful program and really impressive undertaking, incorporating a variety of perspectives and voices. And I'm really impressed by the speakers because the panels today include highly outstanding speakers from different ethnic backgrounds. But I think we also have a great audience with us here today, both from HKU and from a diverse spectrum of our community, contributing a really valuable knowledge exchange event in celebration of International Women's Day. I think we really had the privilege to hear and see many inspiring stories. A clear message brought up from the discussion is different and equal. I think we believe that all-out support and positive mindset are keys to navigating positive changes and impact. Diversity and inclusion are all about getting each and every one of us on board. At the end of the day, the aim is to create an innate sense of respect and mutual understanding for fellow human beings within our community, treating each other without prejudice or biases. So on behalf of CGED, I would like to once again sincerely thank EOC for such a meaningful initiative and such a successful exhibition, as well as the Faculty of Arts at HKU for their generous support. A special thank you to Gina, my dear colleagues and all speakers who participated in this seminar and share with us their unique experiences and invaluable insights. Well, I would also like to thank Georgina for all her hard work in making this happen. And last but not least, we are truly honored and thankful to you all for being here today. Just as a final note, I would like to mention that the EOC's photo exhibition will take place from March 6th to March 23rd at the ground floor gallery, Run Shore Tower at HKU. It goes without saying that we very much look forward to welcoming you all at the exhibition. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chong. I just want to give a big thank you once again to all the speakers and moderators today for sharing your inspiring insights with us and very deeply touching stories indeed. And of course, a big thank you to our audience here for joining us and supporting us. As mentioned, a video of this seminar will be posted on the EOC YouTube channel, as well as the CGED website. So once it's available, we'll send a link to your email. So please feel free to spread the word about us. And we look forward to seeing you all again in future EOC events and CGED events. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.